Hello and welcome. I'm Paul Camidge. I'm a service leader with, over 40 years experience as an engineer, the last 20 being a service manager in a variety of medical devices and diagnostics companies. I'm joined today by Arnaud Billard. Arnaud, tell us who you are.
Hello, Paul. Thanks for having me with you today. I'm also in service for a certain time as well, already 16 years. I checked just before. And I mainly worked in the healthcare as well with medical device or diagnostic equipment. So, and as you may hear, I'm located in France.
Super. And we thought we'd go through in an easy way the 5 attributes that we felt are important in 2026 to be a good field service engineer. Why, in your perspective, do you think these are important?
So I think the world is changing. When you have the experience that we have, Paul, you probably have seen that the job of a field engineer have changed from the time you work in this environment and today. So there are a few elements maybe to mention. The fact that products are more and more connected, the systems are more and more fragmented, customers are more and more under pressure, and at the end, the field service are more and more exposed than before. So reflecting on this, I extracted 5 elements that we'll discuss about. So the first one is maybe to define what is a good engineer. That would be the first one. The second one is all what is around the organization of an intervention and what is a field engineer around this organization, what they need to do. The communication, we speak a lot about communication, and we'll also speak about it, but we really need to also, I think about this, and that's a strong component of the role of an FSE, a field service engineer. I will probably say often a FSE. Commercial awareness is probably more new because we probably in the past were more focused on the technical aspect of the role of a field service engineer, but we move more and more on the commercial aspect. So I think it's also important to get that. Resilience, I put resilience. I know that you are like me. This is a word that is overutilized, and but I use it anyway because I think we can anyway develop around this. So that would be the 5 that I would like to share with you and to reflect about. So maybe I can start with what
Let's
is
start
a
with
good
being a good
engineer.
engineer. Is that not obvious?
What is good? That's probably the definition is what means good. I think, as I just mentioned few seconds ago, there is the idea of what means about what means technical mastery. And I think products, as I said, are so complex now that the idea is not about knowing everything about everything. And it's about how you act under uncertainty, I believe. All right. So, as I said, the devices are more and more complex. They are interconnected. Many softwares are behind. There are many discussions about the documentation. Is it properly updated, etc. When you do a root cause analysis, obviously some years ago it was easy to do it by yourself on some component. Now it's more and more on systems. So the thing is that you really need to be able to understand that there are all those components when you are performing installation or repair or at least an intervention, I should say. And the reflection is about the fact that you may not be able to know everything, but at least you need to know where the information is and who has the answer to the question that you may have. So, and that is where there might be, I would say, a tension, a human tension, because at the end, you have to make sure that you have the right positioning in front of the customer, and so you appear confident, but you may have some doubt, and that's normal. And you have also to show that you are confident again, but you are also humble in front of what you see. So that's what I would like to mention about this. Yeah.
I'm going to challenge you, because you used the word or the phrase earlier, technical mastery. So when I started in the world in the 80s, the engineer went with a multimeter and a soldering iron and a bag of components. I mean, that's all gone now. I mean, engineers, because of speed, because of all sorts of reasons, they go to to a customer and they just replace a board or a module or something like this, do you really need to be that well technically trained to do that?
That's an interesting point, because I think obviously both of us were very impacted or influenced by the healthcare industry. But anyway, it's the same in all industries. If I refer to the automotive, if you have to change a mirror, you will change everything on the car and not only the mirror. I think technically speaking, it's obviously changed. You don't need exactly to have your soldering equipment with you. You just have to change a component, that which much more easy. But that means that it's more expensive. That means that you need to understand exactly how to connect it. And again, I'm back to all what is around the technology around, because it's much more complex product. You need to understand exactly what is the connection that you have to establish. You need to understand exactly what is the documentation to install it, even if it appears simple, more simple. We speak about what we both like about serviceability. Serviceability is probably easier, but at the end, all what is around making the job much more diverse, because again, it's not anymore only technical, it's also, or technical, I would say, mechanical, electrical, if I may say, maybe in a proper English way. But it's also, again, what is the documentation behind, and how you make sure that it is working. Because you are not going to check on the component itself. You are going to probably have a special equipment to check if the component that you have just installed works or not. So that, both ways are, as usual, a balance to find between both.
So I suppose what we're saying here is technical mastery has changed from being very deep knowledge of the product and how it works down to component, transistor, integrated circuit level, but now is more about how it interfaces, how it connects, how it can be made to do whatever it actually needs to do. It's interesting.
Definitely, yeah.
So again, exactly as you said right at the start, it's the definition of what is a good engineer, and the word good is by definition slightly open to interpretation. The next one you said is about good organization. Again, you could argue this is obvious. As a field service engineer, you are on your own. There is no one to tell you how long it will take for you to get from wherever you are to wherever your next customer is. There is no one that's going to tell you how you're going to get there. Yes, you have a sat nav that will help you, but fundamentally, you need to work out where you're going to park, where you're going to go and see the customer, how you're going to get there. There are all sorts of very little bits as an engineer, field service engineer, that you're going to have to work out. And it's probably never been as complicated in any of our countries, because the world is more complicated now. There are more and more traffic jams. There are more and more challenges getting places. There are more and more push towards being green, which means there are charges to go into certain areas. Can you use them? Are you allowed to? Do you have to pay for them? And it's funny, in my own personal experience, taking people who have never worked as a field service engineer into this environment, that's often the thing that they find most challenging. It would be slightly mean to say that the younger generation find that far more challenging than I think we found it certainly when I started in the world. You kind of expected to have to look at a map. You didn't have sat nav. You kind of expected to be out of communication with the rest of your organization because you didn't have the same. So I think it should sound obvious. And it doesn't just go on how to get, once you're there, we've got the challenges of, are you the right person? Do you have the right tools? Have you left them in the car, which is 1.5 miles away? Have you got the parts that were needed? I dare say everybody's got the story of standing in front of a customer, incredibly embarrassed that the one part you need is not with you. And how do you tell the customer that? And then, of course, you've got the managers, and that was you and me, saying, you need to get to your next job. We need more jobs out of you. We need your utilization high. So being organized is a fantastically, it's a really important part. I often say the story about an engineer, this is many years ago, who was told by a centralized dispatch team not in the UK, oh, there's a job just come in Southampton. You're in Northampton. Could you pop there and get it? It won't take you long, will it? Now, if you live in the UK, you'll know that Northampton and Southampton are nowhere near each other. But if you're living in the Netherlands, where this particular dispatch team were, you wouldn't know that. So you have to be organised to be able to go, whoa, hang on a second, I can't do that. That's not where I am. And what do you think about organisation then, Arnaud?
I think that what you say is very interesting and probably linked to what we said before. You just mentioned that when you challenge on the first one, this fact that now we just change component. And there is this famous expression in English, you don't know what you don't know. If you look at this, you don't know the job, and you say, I just have to replace this component. It's very easy, very easy. The reality is very different with the elements that you said. I would probably align, I would maybe say that a bit differently. I think the FSC have definitely a cognitive overload, which is very, very, very high. And definitely the idea is to organize yourself, prepare really properly the intervention before arriving on the site, being prepared with all what you say, having the part, understanding what are the customer expectations. Maybe something that you didn't mention, but I'm sure you have in mind is also the complexity of the CRM now. When you look at some years ago, what you had to record at an FSC after an intervention was probably, that was very limited compared to what we had before. So that is something that is important. And I would say it's, I don't know, the thing is that when you have the organization, what is important for me is all your organization needs to be invisible when it works. And you work, everything works perfectly, it's invisible. And in fact, the customer is happy and eventually your management is happy as well. Unfortunately, when it doesn't work, it's painfully very visible, and when it starts to be a real challenge. So I would say you gave those examples, not having the right part, etc. So it's really a question of anticipating, understanding what is the customer stress, also to have the right attitude yourself, and making sure that in fact you are representing yourself, but also all the team that is behind. They are behind. They are invisible, but they are also with you. So that's key for me. Yeah.
That brings us on to the third point you put, communication.
Communication. Yeah. Yeah. Sorry.
Carry on.
No, to me, the reason why I mentioned communication is something that I always heard through my entire career and say, okay, communication is so important. I probably believe that we speak about it so much, but it's probably the most underestimated skill or underused skill. So to me, why it is so important, there are several aspects, I would say. The first one is obviously internal communication. First of all is how the information is escalated. How is it escalated properly, clearly to you? The other one is explaining the uncertainty without sounding incompetent. You communicate to customers. As we said, you are not pretending to know everything, but however, you are in front of a customer under stress who needs to feel comfortable because you are there. And there is also this tension where you may need to ask help because you are not, it depends also again on the complexity of the equipment. Some of them might be more easy to repair, but you can ask. The thing is how you do that without losing your credibility in front of the customers. What is also interesting is that some customers also don't understand themselves, their equipment or their systems. That's a reality, and this is where it's sometimes a bit comfortable. Or how do you explain that to them without turning it to where the customer will feel, okay, do they look at me like I don't know anything about what I'm doing, my operation? So you have to find the right balance to interact with the customer, and obviously this in the context where they are very stressed, maybe very defensive on some time and under pressure. So to me, again, there is this aspect of the fact that the customer is not necessarily evaluating the technical skill that you have, but are comfortable you are putting them in a safe environment so that they know that you are there and they know that because it's you, things will go well. So that is this human experience that is key in the communication parameter to be a good FSE.
So let me ask you a question then, because as you say, we've both been doing this a long time. Do we actually train field service engineers in this area? Because I'm thinking about my own example, and we had phenomenal across my career. So in all sorts of companies that I've worked for, we had brilliant technical training programs delivered by superb trainers, really, really good, whether you were flown to a different country or whether you had the training center in the country you lived in, whether it was on site training, really, really strong. More soft skills training, I'm not sure I ever saw a really good training program. Do you think this is an area we miss?
Same experience, I agree. I think on my side, what I was trying to do in my previous experiences still today is trying to manage that through the hiring process. You know, you identify someone, you try to have someone obviously who is technically skilled and have the potential to grow in the technical aspect, and trying to see how the person is interacting during the hiring process to check if this person has a soft skill. Do we have really, or did we have in the past, in my past, in experience, strong training on soft skills? Not really. I think it's emerged step by step now because we see, as we said again, that we are evolving and the technical aspect is not less important, but part of bigger ecosystem with other elements that we already mentioned. So I think it comes, and I predict that it will be more and more important, and more companies in my understanding will do it.
When you're interviewing for a field service engineer, or if you were to be interviewing for a field service engineer now in 2026, what balance would you put between the technical skills or the ability to learn technical skills versus the softer skills, the communication skills, or the ability to learn communication skills?
I probably changed on that because at the beginning I was very focused on the technical aspect, and customers were really focused on the technical expertise. It probably changed now because I value more and more the quality of the interaction. Because again, the systems are so complex that you need to be able to manage customer expectation and being able to answer them. I will just share something very personal that I would encourage anyone to do it. I think I told you in another forum. I just been trained in improvisation in a theater school, and I think it's something that I would encourage also other technical people to do, because it helps you, to really release the pressure and say exactly what's going on, show who you are, and accept the vulnerability that you may have in case of a situation is complex. And that also helps to give more confidence to the customer. So that might be a proposal that may give to this school to contact
it's interesting that one of the things that has come out of doing this exercise is the recognition that the attributes, the traits that we are looking for in people coming into field service in 2026 and beyond are perhaps different than they were before. None more so than the next one, commercial. Now, this is a really contentious one. Immediately, everybody goes to the idea that more and more companies are asking their field service engineers to be salespeople. In the environment both you and I worked in, hospitals and healthcare institutions used the global pandemic as an ability to shut out people that they didn't want to see. And so salespeople find it more and more challenging to actually meet customers. So it's understandable that companies are looking to other resources that they've got on site to sell their products, whether it's service contracts, ad hoc services upgrades, or indeed the product themselves, whether it's tests, whether it's replacement items, etc., etc. But obviously the pushback is that engineers join an organization to be an engineer, and they say, I don't want to be a salesperson, thanks. And realistically, the attributes of a salesperson and the attributes of a good engineer are probably quite far apart. Where do you stand on the use of field service engineers in a commercial environment?
So I would share an experience. I tried in the past to transform, I would say, pure technical field service engineer to some kind of hybrid, being still having the role to maintain the equipment of our customers, but also selling something. And that was probably one of the most or the biggest mistake that I've done in my career that I would still not recommend now, at least in Europe. Might be I've heard that in other parts of the world that might be relevant. The thing is that, in my opinion, you can't do two jobs in one, especially when they are so different. And the background where when you are an engineer or technician, you have been trained on technical aspects. So to me, the point is not to ask a field service engineer, a technical person, to become a salesperson because the person didn't learn. You can learn, obviously, but it's more to take the opportunity of a visit to build on the relationship that we have with the customer, with the trust we have them, to generate some leads. So, and those leads won't be to directly sell something, but me more in a position that I'm not anymore as an FSC a troubleshooter. I'm here obviously to repair something that my target. But then there is this question is, what do you need more to do next, dear customer, that may help to support your strategy? Obviously, this is a question that we ask more easily when we are a manager, of course. But when you are an FSC, you have the trust of those customers that you see regularly because eventually the equipment fail or you do the regular maintenance, etc. And this is what I would encourage, and I believe that we need to do more, is to do that. And the idea is, in fact, to be very customer-centric, is not to try to make more money. Obviously, yes, that is beneficial for the company we work with, but before all is to be really focused on what the customer wants. What do you want? Yes, you did that on my equipment, but I would like to do that. Okay, I may do it. So, and we will work on it. So, this is this nuance that is a bit different. Sometimes some FSCs don't necessarily understand. Maybe I would like to have your experience on that, because when I say understand, maybe I didn't explain correctly, but generate a lead or being an FSC salesperson is something different, if you see what I mean.
Yeah, definitely. I wonder, just as we said previously, that we're now looking at different attributes, different traits when we're employing field service engineers. Once upon a time, it was you need to be a good engineer, you need to be able to organize yourself. Now we're saying you need to be a good communicator. You need to have, the English phrase would be commercial acumen, the ability to at least understand, to generate a lead if you need to be. It sounds to me like we are asking field service engineers of 2026 to be an awful lot more things than they were perhaps when I started in my career 40 years ago. And I wonder whether now I wonder whether I'd even get a job, frankly. But I think there's one more, and I know we both don't like the word resilient, but I think it's worth spending a few minutes focusing on why resilience is so important for somebody as a field service engineer.
So resilience, in fact, the reason why for me it's sometimes a bit difficult to keep hearing this word, it's also related to a mechanical word that I learned when I was in my mechanical engineering school, and I think it's not used properly. I won't pretend in English, maybe there are some nuances I don't understand, but at least in French it means other things. But anyway, I would say anyway that is an important topic, so I decided to put it, so I won't criticize too much, but I would like probably to call it differently or to redefine it. In fact, for me, when we say resilience, I would probably prefer to call it psychological endurance. So again, based on what we said before, we have to go back at what is the reality of a field service engineer. You are alone. You are lonely. You go from a customer to another one, you are in your car, you repair, you go somewhere else. You may have some colleagues asking you to participate to meetings. You are in front, as we are at the moment, in a Teams meeting. but you are alone. You look around you, you are alone. So there is obviously this aspect to be considered. We are social animals. I still believe it's very important to keep that in mind despite of all the technology that we have. And there is also this emotional labor that we have with customers that we should also not underestimate. It's sometimes very energy draining to be in front of customer when the customer is very stressed eventually, and the repair is also very complex to manage. So I think again, I already spoke about that, but to me, it's really the idea of being human in front of the customer, in front of the situation that you have, and I would say manage the stress. Again, with being vulnerable, and you need to manage when you are a field senior engineer. You need to manage the solitude. That's a reality. So there is this aspect of how do you manage your mental health? How do you ask for help? Because even if you are alone, you can try to call your customer. So it's probably this idea of as much as you can to meet some of your colleagues more face to face, because I still believe again we need that. So and I would say this idea of there is a cost to pay to be the one who knows, the one who is fixing the things, and you can be very proud. I mean, during all my career, the reason why I joined service organization is not a mistake. I joined because people are really great in service. They want to help each other, so they are very proud, especially field service engineer and myself as a manager. When you close a repair and you see the customer is happy, you know that there is a purpose and you did something great. But sometimes you are very exhausted at the end of the day, of a week, to say, oh my gosh, I did that, but I'm alone. You see what I mean?
Yeah,
and we
definitely.
face that wherever we are in the organization in service. So that's the reason why I think it's important to keep that in mind. I don't believe it will change in the future, whatever the technology is. We need to continue to have this as a trait of a good field service engineer again.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much. So those are our 5 attributes we think you need to be a great field service engineer in 2026. In no particular order, I might add. You could argue resilience is the most important, or you could argue that being a great engineer is more important. Any last words before we close, Arnaud?
In fact, to be honest, preparing this, I wrote a sentence that I'm a bit proud of it, so I will write it, because I think it's a nice reflection, maybe that would help to have people joining us in the reflection. I wrote, when service becomes more complex, humanity doesn't become less important. So, and to me, that means a lot. It becomes a stabilization force, in fact. So that would be my final word, to hopefully, again, interest and get some feedbacks from people who will be happy to listen to us.
That's brilliant. Thanks, Arnaud. I really appreciated that. Well, those are our ideas. You all may have completely different ideas, and we'd love to hear from you. Engage either via the Field Engineer or on LinkedIn. Tell us what you think. Tell us why we're wrong. Tell us which order you'd change these to, or perhaps which ones you'd add or take away. Until next time, goodbye.